Hey friends and welcome. My name is Dr. Heather Carton and I'm coming to you live from Ask Dr. Heather on a very hot and controversial topic. So I'm excited to be here tonight. I do want to actually help answer this question simply and brief, but as always, I am not your primary healthcare provider. I always want to make sure that you're checking with your healthcare provider before making any drastic shift or changes with your lifestyle, with your diet, with adding any new supplements into your diet, because they have your full health history. They have all your lab work. They know everything there is to know about you. So I'm here to help answer this question. I have been getting in my inbox, what about the ketogenic diet? What about thyroid? Thyroid is such a hot topic right now, and I can actually tell you why it's such a hot topic. But let's first talk a little bit about what thyroid is. As you're joining me, let me know where you're joining from. I see there's more than a dozen people on here, but I can't see anybody. I can't see any questions. I don't know if that's a Facebook thing, but would love to know if you have questions while I'm talking. Please drop it right down below. But if you don't know, the thyroid is a little gland right here. You can actually sometimes palpate or feel it. When you stick your head back and swallow, you can feel it kind of move up and down. I like to compare the thyroid as to an automobile. The thyroid is like the ignition to your body. It actually helps turn your body on and helps turn it off. So in the morning when you wake up, it is your thyroid plus a few other hormones that actually help start your day. And it's the thyroid plus the cortisol and adrenaline, which actually helps turn your body off. So if you have a hard time starting your body in the morning, get up and get going, or if you have a hard time turning it off at night, oftentimes that can be a symptom of a thyroid imbalance. But there's a whole bunch of different things going on. The reason I think after practicing 23 plus years that there's so many questions going on about the thyroid is because we are experiencing a lot of stress. The pandemic, for the first time ever in my lifetime and for many of you as well, is creating a lot of stress. We talk about stress. We know that if cortisol goes up and if we know that adrenaline goes up, we know that our thyroid actually goes down. Our body's always trying to be at homeostasis. Homeostasis simply means a balanced state. Somebody asked me that question as well. Our body wants to heal. It wants to be at a balanced state. That's why it's always trying to throw something in balance. So as we briefly talk about stress, as we deep dive into the thyroid, think about it like this. Our body knows what short-term stress is. It's actually prepared for short-term stress, like to pull an all-nighter once in a while for an exam, or to prepare for litigation if you're an attorney or a surgeon, or to actually go for a workout. That's short-term stress. Our body's ready for that. But our body is not ready for chronic stress, like if your house burns down and you have a fire, or a pandemic stress that's been happening, or you lose your job for 18 plus months, or maybe you have a 9 months of a very hard labor or very hard pregnancy, or maybe you lose a child or a loved one. That's a very hard, stressful situation. Our body is not really set to recover from that if things keep happening time after time after time. So your house burns down, you lose a child in that house, and then you lose your job in the meantime of all that. That chronic stress can really totally disrupt all of our hormones going on in our body. And the thyroid does not act alone. So when we talk about the thyroid, where does it get its input from? Just like your car has a key, it also has an engine, it has gasoline, it has spark plugs, all those things work together. Your thyroid's the same way. We have something called the hypothalamus in your brain that gives signal to the pituitary. Pituitary is a little hormone or little organ that sits right up here. It actually releases many different hormones. It releases one hormone called the thyroid releasing hormone, a TSH, I'm going to call that. The TSH actually gives rise to your thyroid and tells your thyroid, well, let's get up, let's go. So it tells the thyroid stimulating hormone to let's go, but it doesn't act alone. People often just measure the TSH from their doctors and say, well, it's in the normal range, and the normal range is 0.4 to 4.5 for some labs. We know the optimal range for the thyroid, so write this down, should be about 1.8 to 3.0. That's where your body functions optimally. There's no tissue changes. Everything's functioning harmoniously. And then we also know that the T3 and T4 are actually produced by the thyroid gland itself. About 20% of T4 and about 80% of T3 are actually produced by the thyroid gland itself, and it's converted in the liver via iodine. So there's lots of different things going on. It's not just done by itself. And the engine for our body, just as we have a battery and an engine for a car, is our adrenal glands that sit right on top of our kidneys. So a lot of things are going on to make our thyroid work. So let's keep to the topic. Keep reminding me, keep to the topic. I don't know why I can't see any comments at all. I keep sliding it right or left and it's not going anywhere. So I don't know how to get the comments to show up because I'd love to see your questions. Oh, I can see Deb. Deb Johnson is here. So, okay, great. Deb, thanks for joining us and again, joining me, and let me know where you're coming from. So the thyroid gland is, again, it's more than just getting a release from your thyroid. It's more than just making T3 and T4. It's very much determined on the micronutrients that our body has. Where do we get the micronutrients? We get it from the diet that we eat. So if we're eating a diet that's high in processed carbohydrates and not high in nutrients like magnesium and selenium and B vitamins and fatty acid or fat soluble vitamins like copper and zinc and vitamin A and B and C, we don't have those. I have some notes over here, so I'm going to deter over here so I keep focused with you guys. If we don't have those macronutrients in our body, we're not feeding those to our body, then we're not going to be able to break them down to help our thyroid actually operate. So it needs those things to get moving. So if we don't fix the gut, then you actually don't ever fix the thyroid. But first you actually have to fix the insulin, because the insulin actually determines that conversion between T4 to T3, which actually helps get our body going. So let's just define what T3 and T4 are, since we're talking about those. So T4 total is a total hormone produced by the thyroid for the thyroid and measures the thyroid activity. T3 uptake is a measure of unsaturated thyroid activity. And I'll put this down below. So we know that T4 is actually made, 20% is made by the thyroid gland. About 80% of T3 is actually made by the thyroid gland. And it's actually converted from T4 to T3. That's done inside the liver. So if someone has liver issues or taking prescription medications like beta blockers, other things like that, birth control, I have a whole list of medications that actually can cause hypothyroidism and that can lead to changes in those. Things like estrogens, synthetic hormones, beta blockers, birth controls, different types of plastics. If you're drinking a lot of plastic or you eat out of plastic, you microwave plastic foods, and you have for years over time. You even take steroids like just metered dose inhalers for allergy seasons, or maybe you have poison ivy issues, or maybe you're on a low dose steroid for some autoimmune condition. That can also actually disrupt and cause a hypothyroid system because it depletes your body of zinc and copper and vitamin A and B. If you're a vegetarian, because we know that we get zinc and copper and A and B from generally meat sources like grass-fed beef and from eggs and salmon, that can also cause an issue. So you need to eat the foods in order for the gut to digest it. And nutritional digestion happens in the small intestine to actually help the thyroid start to heal itself. I'm trying to keep it super simple, I promise. So free T4 is actually what's the amount available for you. So what can the thyroid use to actually start your body going, and what can you start it from stopping? So there's lots of different players involved in there. It's not as easy as just taking a pill and saying, let's balance out my thyroid. Let's just change my diet and balance out my thyroid. So I'm also going to make a recommendation if you're going to try a ketogenic diet. And let me just make a little back up, because sometimes people make a drastic change. Maybe they're doing 200 to 300 to 400 grams of carbohydrate. They've read this amazing information. Their friend told them, if I do a ketogenic diet, I can actually help fix my thyroid, which I totally support that, and I see that. However, you do need to eat a clean autoimmune ketogenic diet. What does that mean? You need to ditch the dirty dairy. So eat ghee instead of just regular butter. Or make sure it's grass-fed butter. No hard cheeses, no soft cheeses, no dairy, no soy, no packaged food. I would not eat any sweeteners. Just eat carbohydrates. Yes, carbohydrates can come from things like broccoli. Make sure you're rotating through your green vegetables. And I have a whole list of green vegetables I'll send you. If you want that list of autoimmune vegetables and foods, just drop down or send me your email list. Just email me your email and I will send that to you tomorrow, because I'll be over my screen time tonight. But I'll send you that list of autoimmune friendly food list, because you want to make sure you're eating your carbohydrates all from green leafy vegetables. That's where your nutrients and all those micronutrients come from. So you're getting those zinc and copper, magnesium, selenium, lithium, all those things come from those trace minerals. But you have to fix the gut and you have to stop the carbohydrates. So the other thing we have to do is we have to stop the stress, which you're going to get to. So we talked about the stress being an alarm stress, like the house burning down, which overstimulates the thyroid gland itself. So let's talk about if it's a thyroiditis, so if it's inflammation of the thyroid, so an itis. So that just means inflammation, whether it's Graves' disease, whether it's overactive or underactive, whether it's Hashimoto's or Graves'. Itis is going to involve an antibodies. So it's also going to involve some type of inflammation. We know when we look at the research that ketones, when your body's on a ketogenic diet, that actually stops in some inflammatory cascades, so some interleukin cascades, NLRP3 inflammasome. So we know that can happen. So Michelle and you guys and Jojo, that is awesome. Just send it through Messenger if you want to, if you don't want other people getting your information. But I can grab it from here too as well, Jerry Ann. So if you just want to send it through Messenger, I can get it that way, or you can leave it there and then I'll delete it after I get it. So we know itis is just inflammation. We know ketones, when you're in a ketogenic diet, ketones inhibit NLRP3 inflammasome, but you also want to Make sure that you're not having foods like soy and dairy and some other foods, processed foods like salami, because you don't want to do dirty keto. You want to do clean keto, and you want to make sure that as you transition into it, that you're actually going very, very slow, because you don't want to shock the thyroid. It's already out of balance. It's already inflamed. And if you're used to having 200 to 300 grams of carbohydrates, you actually just want to go slow and steady. So first, just simply get some type of tracker, My Carb Tracker, My Fitness Pal, and see how many carbs you're having. Maybe if you're taking in 300 grams of carbohydrates, maybe for 10 days go down to, if you're doing 300, go down to 200 or 185 and see how you feel for a few days. And that can be anywhere from 3 to 5 days. Let your body acclimate, and then go down another 50 or 75 carbohydrates. Let your body acclimate, go slow and steady. Don't automatically go slow on your carbohydrates and bump up your fats. Keep your fats where they are until your body starts to acclimate. So you want to keep that kind of zone, that 40-30-30 balance in mind as you're transitioning into keto. So you can look up those macros of zone to low carb or LCHF to all the way to keto. You're going to start getting some amazing results, because we know insulin is a driving force to hypothyroidism, and we're going to get there in just a minute. So if it's an itis, we know there's also different causes to it. Things like Clorox, things like different type of fluoride. So I would ditch your fluoride toothpaste. Also things like mercury. So if you have fillings in your teeth, there's a lot of correspondence that's actually... Sorry, now I'm getting all your guys' messages through on Messenger, which is awesome. We know that there's things like Teflon. So all the information we've been told in this, probably in the 80s and 90s, is pretty true about those heavy metals actually affecting the thyroid. So if you can get new pans, maybe store things in glass pans instead of plastic. If you have some Teflon pans that have scratches in them, get those out. If you actually have an option to do a fluoride-free toothpaste, fluoride-free rinse, that's great as well. Do filtered water. Get rid of any of the I'd say processed artificial sugars. I think most people know that. And then again, you also want to heal the gut. You heal the gut by getting rid of the carbohydrates. All carbohydrates, every sugar, whether it's an organic blueberry, whether it's organic strawberry, organic watermelon, all sugar breaks down, or all carbohydrates break down to glucose. They all increase inflammation. That's why we want to slowly decrease inflammation. The thyroid's already under stress, and we don't want to shock it. So that's why we want to go slow and steady. Now, some people can be successful. If already maybe on a zone of 40-30-30 diet, or maybe on a paleo diet, maybe they can go ahead and make that shift pretty quickly. It just depends on where you are in your journey. And you're going to know if you make that shift and you are tired and you get more tired, your body's going to tell you, I'm not ready yet. I've got to go a little bit slower. And that's really where I have been able the last 5 years. Again, I've been practicing for over 25 years. If I count my clinical experience, 23 years in business, 6 years with clinical business. But that's why I use exogenous ketones. I have been able to the last 5 years. When I have people drink the ketones as they're making the shift happen, they're getting the ketones in their body. This does not make a rise in their blood sugar, so we're not stimulating insulin, we're not stimulating glucose, we're not causing any rise in that, so we're keeping a nice stable feed of energy to your thyroid. We talk about ketones and we talk about the ketogenic diet. Remember, ketones supply about 38% more oxygen than glucose. So we're getting more oxygen to the tissue, which is healing. So we're slowing down that free radical formation that can happen anytime there's an itis or Graves' disease or Hashimoto's. We also know when there's a hypothyroid issue, and we'll talk about some of those symptoms. So let's just talk about those symptoms now. So maybe you don't know if you have a hypothyroidism. Maybe you're in that normal range, which is 0.4 to 5.4 on that TSH. And I'm sharing with you, we like to have our patients have their TSH at 1.8 to really about 3.0 is where we like to have those. It can be things like cold hands and cold feet. Because remember, when your body's in shock and is competing and the cortisol's all stimulated and your adrenaline's all stimulated, then your TSH drops, making a hypothyroid state. Well, then the body says, I want to conserve all of my energy for my heart and for my brain. So your hands get cold. Then you don't get blood supply to your hands, so then your nails get brittle. We also know that your hair can get dry because your body says, who cares about that? Because we need to make sure that we're having nice brain activity, getting oxygen to your eyes, getting oxygen to your brain, getting blood to your brain, blood to your heart, making sure your kidneys still work. But you know about the other stuff, we don't care. So then you start to lose your hair, eyebrows. You start to get puffiness around your eyes. You start to get very brittle hair. The libido starts to go. You start to have very, very slow liver function, very slow kidney function. So you start to see liver enzymes start to go up, liver activity go up. You start to see cholesterol go up. You start to get constipation because the bowels start to slow down. everything starts to slow down, because if the cortisol is high, because the stress is really high, and your adrenaline starts to high, which are all metabolites, right? They're all things that drive your body. Just like, remember, the thyroid starts and stops your body. It's trying to hold back the body when your cortisol is going and the stress is really high. It's going, whoa, hold everything back. Well, it slows down everything in the body process. It can slow things down from even the pulse to the blood pressure to the bowels to the urine to the female cycles to male testosterone, because all it's saying is, I have to preserve the brain, I have to preserve the heart. So then you do get things like a lowered heart rate. You get tingling. Your body starts conserving weight. It holds on to weight gain. Number one, because your metabolism slowed down, so you're not burning as many calories anymore. And now you start to become insulin resistant. So your body says, well, I've got to conserve energy. I don't know what's going to happen next. So now it starts to do that. It also starts to hold on to cholesterol. Remember, cholesterol breaks down into our sex hormones, but cholesterol can also break down into fats. Fats are also stored fuel. Remember, when you go on a ketogenic diet, your liver taps into your body and breaks down that fat into ketones and uses it for energy. That's another reason that your body starts to do that. And then you get the cold hands, cold fingertips. You can also get a lot of brain fog because you're not getting as much energy and as much oxygen. You're tired. You're not sleeping through the night because your body's kind of waking you up to make sure that you're still there. And that's why you get that kind of that sleep pattern where you're waking up every 80 to 90 minutes just because your body's doing this kind of a check on you. Your body temperature lowers down. I have patients all the time say, my normal body temperature is 97. I'm like, well, that's not normal. Maybe it's normal for you, but that's an indication as a detective. I always say doctors are detectives, saying, you know what, you probably got to see if something else isn't going on. Your body's telling us something there. So when we look at a hypothyroid state and we say, okay, what can we do to help that out? Well, we need to cut the carbs so we stop the inflammation in the gut. We need to start actually looking at what we can do to eliminate the stress. And so that's where we work together. What is the biggest stress? Generally, it's either relationship stress, it's financial stress, or it's physical stress. Physical stress could be obesity. Physical stress could be a knee replacement. It could be an amputation. It could be loss of hair. It could be dental stress, not be able to chew your food. It could be a colostomy bag. Lots of things can be physical stresses. You're unable to work out, things like that. So when you start to identify the stress can be just as important as having another type of physical issue as being like high cholesterol or blood pressure issue. So let's switch over to having a hypothyroidism. One, we kind of already leaped into that, where we look at the signs and symptoms that we just shared about, and we look at those things being, you know, elevated cholesterol for no reason, you're eating fairly clean, it seems like, and you're gaining weight for some unknown reason. We also talked about iodine being that element that actually converts T4 to T3, which actually happens inside of the liver. But we also know for women, the highest concentration of iodine is actually in the ovary. And so when the thyroid doesn't have enough iodine because the insulin is too high, when the insulin's too high and you have metabolic resistance, then we actually have something called deiodinase that actually starts to get, or superiodinase, that actually starts to get suppressed because we start seeing a rise in insulin or an inactivation. This happens in type 1, type 2, and type 3 diabetes. So in type 1 diabetes, we see a suppression of insulin and leptin. In type 2 diabetes, we see an increase in insulin and leptin. Then type 3 diabetes, we see a total inactivation of insulin. And so what happens is that inactivates the iodine. Well, we need the iodine to convert that T4 to T3 so we can get the thyroid hormone working. Well, it actually goes to the ovary because the ovary has the highest amount of iodine. So then we start robbing the iodine from the ovary, and now we start getting things like polycystic ovarian disease in women. So we start seeing the cyst formation. And many times I ask females, have you ever had PCOS, or have you had pain with ovulation? Have they ever suspected this? Do you have high testosterone levels? Do you have some of these, these other characteristics? Well, yeah, how'd you know that? Because everything relates to everything else. When you look at PCOS, you're going to see a high carbohydrate diet, a high testosterone level. What's the treatment for it? Lowering the carbohydrates. So when you start looking at, is a ketogenic diet, is that safe for someone who has a thyroid imbalance? When you look at what the treatment is for thyroiditis, Graves or Hashimoto's, hypothyroidism, PCOS, it's all the same thing. I generally say PCOS is just insulin resistance of the ovaries or diabetes of the ovaries. It absolutely is very, very helpful. However, you need to work with a healthcare provider, and you need to go slow with that and make sure that you're also giving the body minerals, because remember, the gut is deprived in those minerals, so you need to make sure it's getting the iodine that it needs. A lot of times iron deficient anemia or having not the right enough protein can also cause a lot of those deficiencies, because those antibodies actually are made from protein. So if you're a vegan, I'm not pitching picking on vegans at all, because I was a vegan or vegetarian for 7 to 8 years. Didn't work very well for me because I was really just a carbitarian and a fruitarian. I'll be honest about that. That was when I was in college. But anyway, knowing what I know now, we have 21 essential amino acids, and we need to get all 21 of those into our bodies as randomly as we can to create that metabolic confusion, because our tissues need a variety of those. But in order to help that, we need to make sure that we're getting all those different hormones made, and your doctor's actually testing all those different ones. Those T3, the T4, the T3 uptake, T3 reverse, all those different ones. I do have another YouTube video that's a little more extensive on thyroid health and testing itself. But today the question has been, I tried the ketogenic diet and I felt worse. I tried the ketogenic diet, I drank exogenous ketones, and I didn't feel any better. What's happening? What's going on? What's all the controversy about? What I have found, and a lot of leading thought leaders, and if you go on YouTube or if you go and look at other people or leading documentaries, you look on some of the endocrinology magazines or some of the Journal of Medicines, they're all saying the same thing. It can be very, very helpful, but you need to do it the right way. You need to do it the clean way. So you need to take out those foods that actually can hamper or irritate the thyroid, things that actually can irritate the gut, or if you have other food allergies, and you need to keep it clean. And intermittent fasting is another part you can play with that, because when you can let the body rest, and that's what intermittent fasting is just letting the body rest and allow the thyroid time to heal and digest, because that's what it is when you're fasting, then it's rest and digest. The rest of the body can heal, whether it's in that itis or that autoimmune situation where you're not eating and digesting enough protein so your body can make enough antibodies, or where it's a hypo state, where it's that big tug of war because there's so much stress going on, your cortisol is high, you're not sleeping, you have high adrenaline, so this is a high gas on the pedal. Remember, the thyroid also turns on and turns off the body, so this is all high because at night our cortisol is supposed to rest and repose and recycle. Well, the thyroid is just trying to turn it off, so it keeps down regulating and going hypo, slower and slower. Well, then again, it's a big tug of war. Somebody has to give. The easiest thing to do is try to dial back on your stress. Sometimes that's hard to do, and try to get really good sleep hygiene in. Clean up the diet. Sugar feeds inflammation. We all agree on that. Sugar's a very short-term fuel source. It's just like throwing liquid. We were up camping last weekend. It was just like throwing liquid lighter fuel on a gas fire. You're throwing it on there and squirting it on there every 10 minutes. Every time you have a carbohydrate, that's what's doing to the thyroid. You're lighting it on fire. You're lighting it on fire. You're lighting it on fire every 30 minutes. The average person eats 17 times a day. If you're doing a ketogenic diet and you're eating 2 to 3 meals a day, and then you're fasting for anywhere from, you're doing 16 to 12 hours a day, which means you're eating in an 8 to 10 hour window, then you're having a nice time where it actually can rest, it can rebuild, it can repose, it can make the hormones that it needs. The liver has time to build and repair and get ready to make this shift in those hormones from that T4 to that T3 and rebuild. And then your body has time to absorb what you're feeding it, because that's really the most important time. It's that now it can build and refeed. But if it's always digesting food, your nervous system is always digesting. There's never that rest and repose period. And we also want to make sure, I want to mention that another thing that came up, well, fasting is not good for people with thyroid issue. I agree with extended fasting, which is longer than 2 weeks. So I would not suggest, again, check with your healthcare provider, but I would not suggest that you fast longer than 2 weeks for a duration time with any health care condition. Just check with your healthcare provider first. Have your blood chemistries checked, your CBC, your CMP, your B vitamins. I'd have your magnesium, your trace elements, have all that checked. But doing periodic fasting, 24-hour up to 72-hour, along with your healthcare provider, I think is a great way to allow your thyroid, to allow your nervous system, your adrenals, everything to just digest and rest and slow down that whole alarm system that's going on. And then it can kind of, again, push like that reset button and let things kind of just resettle. So I'm just going to take a little bit of review here and make sure I didn't miss anything on I did probably miss a lot of things on my pages, but just again, the number one thing is we're talking about what diet to choose when helping fix a thyroid. Number one, identify the stress that's going on in your body. Number two, you have to fix the insulin, and fixing the insulin, you're going to fix the gut. So when you pull out those carbohydrates, those processed carbohydrates, and then to start to stair step down the carbohydrates, again, that's why I love I've been on Facebook for a long time. I probably have not endorsed a product except for vitamin D, like I've endorsed prove its ketones. And if you need you need a referral code to order these, so I'm very happy to share my referral code with you. I actually love to do that. So if you need a referral code, let me know and I will share that with you so you can order that. But it's the best tool that I have found in 25 years of practicing to help people stair step down their carbohydrates, because this is straight energy. This is like your body metabolizing, like, I don't know, 12 to 15 tablespoons of coconut oil, palm kernel oil. So your body's getting that energy, so the liver's not having to go out there and break down the fat. You know, with a thyroid issue, your body's already tired. It's already sluggish. It's in that tug of war. And to tell it to go break down and grab that fat after it goes through the glucose and glycogen and then go do that, it can be exhausting. You cannot feel good. That's when I love having the ketones. That's when you just put in that instant energy that is bioidentical to what our body makes. And then when you make that shift happen in that transition, your body's going to thank you. Your thyroid's going to thank you. That whole tug of war just goes out so much simpler than having to go through that. Before, I was just telling people, it'll happen, it'll happen, it'll happen. I feel like I was coaching a marathon every single day. I was checking in on people and checking on people. Just wait, rest, listen to your body. And now it makes the shift so much easier. But I am having a lot of question, because it isn't just drink this, fix your thyroid. I'm going to be very, very clear about this. This does not fix your thyroid. Very clear about this. This does not fix your hormone imbalances. This is a tool to use as you start to make the shift to eat a cleaner, healthier diet, to live a healthier life. But you do need to use some other elements to shift with to actually help your body. And you do need to do some metabolic testing. Oftentimes with hypothyroidism, we find low iron. Iron should be above 85 for women. We do find low protein. Protein should be over 7.1 on a lab. We also find that there's some imbalances in vitamin B2, B3, and B6. We also see the necessity for vitamin C, which comes from grass-fed beef. We also see the necessity for vitamin A, but that's a fat-soluble vitamin. You never give it if somebody doesn't need it. So also zinc can also be very, very important. So again, some of those other things we talked about is ditch the plastic, start drinking out of glass, get rid of the Teflon, get rid of the fluoride, get rid of the fluoride, so get a good cleaner on where you're drinking your water from. I have a lot of notes I didn't even go over. So I hope that I brought some value and cleared up some questions today that you have about that. I know I'm going to get questions on those trace minerals. We talked about the function of the thyroid. The thyroid needs iodine, it needs selenium, it needs zinc, it needs iron, it needs tyrosine, it needs fatty acids, it needs fatty acid omega, it needs glandulars. We generally use bovine glandulars. It needs B vitamin supplements. As you start to use less B vitamins, less carbohydrates, because carbohydrates stimulate aromatase, which actually increase estrogen, the less that you start to use of the better carbohydrates, because there are good carbohydrates to use. You can use lots of green leafy vegetables. Again, I'll get that vegetable list out to you. If you joined us late, people are private messaging me their email, so I can email you out my autoimmune friendly vegetable list. It has a glycemic range on it, so there's 3 different lists of vegetables, 1, 2, and 3. There will be vegetables that 1 cup is 3% or less glycemic index. It means how fast it raises the glycemic index or index level. So if you're metabolic resistant, this is very important to you. Up to 9% on some vegetables. So beets would be in that 9%. Brussels sprouts, believe it or not, are on that 9% list, where celery would be in that 3% or less list. So that's also important when you're looking at that. And then keep off the autoimmune things. Again, no dairy, no peanuts, things like that are again on that top 10 kind of inflammatory food list. But that's going to start to restore all those macronutrients that your body needs, because there's no better substitute than like radishes that come out of the ground, right? Or having a parsnip that comes out of the ground that has all those trace minerals that your body needs. So you've got to feed it. And I know people say, well, I drank the ketones for 2 months and my thyroid wasn't fixed yet. So again, there's so much more, and I love this product. So I just want to be very clear about that. And again, thank you, Jane, for saying that. And Susie, I do want to thank everybody for joining me tonight. I'm sorry it took me so long. I wanted to be super brief. That's why I made about 4 notes. Well, I made probably 12 pages of note, and I highlighted like down to 3 notes. But I do want to thank you for joining me. This is absolutely meant to be shared. I want it to be simple science. I didn't want to go into big, heavy science about the whole entire system of how the body operates. But again, this is absolutely meant to be shared. You can find more information on my YouTube channel, which is Ask Dr. Heather. Also also on my blog, which is AskDrHeather.net. I have some cooking videos, some cooking tutorials. I do it myself, so which means it's not perfect. The graphics aren't perfect, but we generally just take the videos from here and transfer it there. But yes, it is meant to be shared. It's meant to be helped. What I find for content is generally what people ask me about. So I have my inbox full of questions about thyroid. Can you talk to my friend? Can you talk to my friend? Can you talk to my friend? Can I put you on a 3 message? Can you do this? Can you do that? Then I'm like, okay, I got to talk about thyroid because I'm getting so many questions, and I know why I'm getting so many questions. I'm getting so many questions because we're so stressed out. We're stressed out from the job. We're stressed out by wearing masks. We're stressed out by what we're supposed to do. What is the right thing to do? What's the wrong thing to do? It's always right to wash your hands, right? It's always right to do that. It's always right to be clean. But I know that we are having a lot of confusion going on with COVID and work, not work, working from home. What's the stress related to that? People are either getting healthier, they're using that time that they were driving to work, but now they're exercising, or they're totally out of rhythm and they can't seem to find their rhythm since March. So I think that's a good topic to do as well. I'd love to organize and schedule things. I've tried to talk about it before, but I didn't have a lot of response, so I didn't think that seemed important to most of the people here joining me, but we could absolutely do that. If that seemed important to you, then you just give me a thumbs up. We can absolutely do more recipes. Rebecca, if you go to AskDrHeather.net, scroll over to Healthy Bites, I have over 1,000 recipes. They are 100% gluten-free, 99% dairy-free. If they're dairy-free, I may have dairy, but then I'll say like cashew cheese, goat cheese, almond cheese, or Daya cheese, or cream cheese. I always have a substitution on there because I do everything dairy-free in my home except for grass-fed butter or ghee. So AskDrHeather.net, you can subscribe there. I have an 8-page guide that you can download your way. There's an 8-page guide there that has some of my favorite recipes to start breakfast ideas, also some vegan recipes, also some great vegetable recipes. So you can go there, AskDrHeather.net, or again, follow me on Instagram, which is AskDrHeather, also on YouTube, Ask Dr. Heather. So simple ways to follow me there, but lots of recipes there, lots of waffle recipes. I love breakfast food, some other interesting things I've posted there lately. But thanks again for joining me. If there's a topic you want to know about, please let me know, and I'm happy to share it. So again, I'm sorry to be so long today, but I really wanted to get through some of those hot topics on thyroid. If we need to break it up and go slower and just talk about hypothyroidism one day and hyperthyroidism one day and thyroiditis one day, we can do that. But you guys have a blessed evening, and we'll be talking to you soon, and I will get those out tomorrow. It's 9 o'clock, which means I'm done with my social media time tonight, which is Central Standard Time here in Kansas. Again, let me know where you're joining me from. Rebecca and Nicole, let me know where you're joining me from. Susie, I see that Amy is from Oklahoma, so she's in my time zone. I'm going to answer a couple questions here. Bobby says, can you please, can we address pituitary issues that are along with hypothyroidism? How can we beat... Oh, so Bobby, when you're talking about pituitary going to the hypothyroidism, so how can we... I'm going to have you restate that, Bobby Starr. So restate that, and then I will answer you again. So if you retype your question about pituitary issues, or maybe I'll read everybody's issues here, and then tomorrow night I'll come back and I'll answer those targeted questions. Just do a Q&A tomorrow on what's here on these questions tomorrow. We'll keep it super brief, but I'll make sure I copy that person on it, and we'll go through those questions, because a lot of times I'll get a lot in my inbox, but just keep them right here, and that's the best way for me to actually get those answered here on this question. So you guys have a great day, and we'll see you soon.